week 9 of the fantasy football season. And here's a few DST units I'd look to drop this week. The first one, the Tennessee Titans. So the Titans, they were a 1 week use with a great matchup versus the Houston Texans. And they got the job done in Houston with this Titan team with a solid fantasy day in week 8 with 10 points allowed, 3 sacks, and an hit though. But this week here, a very tough matchup, obviously, at the Kansas City Chiefs. I give up the least amount of fantasy points to defensive units on the season. So right now, Tennessee owned in 60% of fantasy leagues with 6 teams on bye this week. They're not a defense I'm going to stash on my roster, even though I know they got pretty good matchups coming up in week 10 versus Denver and week 11 in Green Bay. But right now, with all the buys coming in and a very tough matchup at the Kansas City Chiefs here, they're a defense I would drop, but definitely a defense I would revisit later on in the season or even next week here. But right now, there's no way I would stash them with all these bye weeks, and I would drop them. Next defense is the New York Jets. So the Jets, they got off to a great start so far this season, but coming off a tough loss, 22-17 versus the New England Patriots, where the Jets thought, they could beat the Patriots and it'd be type of the passing of the torch ball game, but the Patriots have just had the Jets' number no matter what. So the last few weeks here, this Jet defense, they've been playing good football, but now the next 2 weeks, they're not going to be a defense you should be able to use. Week 9 versus Buffalo, that obviously one of the best offenses, if not the best offenses, pro football. And then go on by in week 10. So the last few weeks here for the Jets. Week 6 at Green Bay, 10 points allowed, 4 sacks, a fumble recovery, touchdown, 2 block kicks. Week 7 at Denver, 9 points allowed, a sack and an into. And week 8 versus the Patriots, 22 points allowed, 6 sacks and an into. So right here, their defense, they're giving up only mid-teens, low 20s for the most part, which is a great thing. But obviously, this Buffalo Bills team's on another level, their offense, compared to the other teams they versed. Because to be honest, this Jet team really hasn't versed a high-powered offense since week 3 versus the Cincinnati Bengals. Week 4, Pittsburgh, they're not doing much. Week 5, Miami, Teddy Bridgewater and Thompson were in that ball game. Week 6, Green Bay, it's been a down year. Week 7, Denver, a bad year for them. And then New England. So right now, the schedule is going to get a little bit tougher for this New York Jet team. But they're still a defense that I think serviceable and usable down the line this year. But the next 2 weeks, like I said, they're not going to be a team you're going to use with Buffalo in the bye weeks. I would drop them off my roster this week. And the third and final defense I look to drop the Indianapolis Colts. So the Colts, they've been a hot and cold type of defense this season. And with a great matchup in week 8, I thought they were going to do damage versus the Washington Commanders coming to town. But obviously that wasn't the case. 17 points allowed, 2 sacks, and an into for a mediocre fantasy game. So right now, week 9, I know it's an all-right matchup at the New England Patriots. But like I said, this Colt team's been too hot and cold, and they really haven't been putting up great numbers. Week 6 versus Jacksonville, 6. Week 7 at Tennessee, 8. And week 8 versus Washington, 5. So I know Leonard's back in the lineup. We know Stephon Gilmore is still one of the best corners in all pro football. But for whatever reason, for fantasy football, this Colt team really isn't getting the job done. So that's a few defense DST units I would drop here for week 9 of the fantasy football season.